Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Timeless Stories. It is so good to have you here. Let us take a breath together. Close your eyes for just a moment if you can. The winter air is cold in Woolsthorpe. The fields are quiet. A stone farmhouse stands low against the gray sky. Inside, a small fire burns. Outside, bare branches move in the wind. A young man sits alone, far from the busy rooms of Cambridge, far from teachers, crowds, and noise. The university has closed because sickness is moving through England. So he has come home. There is no grand laboratory here, no bright hall, no cheering audience. Only a garden, a room, a desk, a few books, a sharp mind, and somewhere near him an apple falls. It is such a small thing. A fruit drops from a tree. It has happened millions of times before. Farmers have seen it. Children have seen it. Birds have seen it. Most people would look once, then walk away. But Isaac Newton does not walk away. He asks a question. Why does it fall down? That question seems simple, almost childish. But inside it, there is a door. Behind that door is the moon, the planets, the motion of the sea, the path of a cannonball, the secret order of the sky. Here is the idea at the heart of Newton's life. His greatest power was not that he saw what no one else could see. His greatest power was that he stopped long enough to truly look at what everyone else ignored. And near the end of this story, we will return to that idea, because the falling apple is famous. But it may not be the deepest lesson Newton left behind. In this story, you will discover how a weak baby from a small English village became one of the most important scientists in history. You will see the lonely boy who felt unwanted, the student who turned pain into focus, and the thinker who changed how we understand motion, light, and gravity. And you will also discover a deeper truth. Sometimes, the quietest life can carry the loudest answer. So make yourself comfortable and let the story begin. Isaac Newton was born in Woolsthorpe, Lincolnshire, England, on Christmas Day in 1642, according to the old calendar used in England at that time. By the modern calendar, his birthday was January the 4th, 1643. His beginning was not strong. He was born very small. People later said he was so tiny that he could fit inside a quart mug, a small drinking cup. He was premature. That means he was born too early, before his body was fully ready for the world. His father, also named Isaac Newton, had already died before the baby was born. So Isaac entered the world without ever meeting his father. His mother, Hannah Ayscough, was left with a farm, a child, and a hard life. The village was not a place of comfort. It was a place of work. Fields needed hands. Animals needed care. Food came from effort. The seasons decided much of life. When Isaac was 3 years old, his mother remarried. Her new husband was Barnabas Smith, a churchman with more money and a more comfortable home. But he did not want young Isaac to live with them. So Isaac was left behind. His mother went away. Isaac stayed with his grandmother. Try to imagine that for a moment. A small boy watches his mother leave. He may not understand the reasons. He may not understand money, or marriage, or adult choices. But he understands absence. He understands the empty space where love should be. This wound stayed with him. Newton did not grow into an easy, open child. He became quiet, private, serious. He often kept his feelings inside. He did not trust easily. He did not like being controlled. Many years later, when people looked at the great scientist, they saw a powerful mind. But under that mind was a child who had learned early that the world could take things away. But the story did not end in that loneliness. Loneliness can close a person, but sometimes it can also sharpen a person. Isaac began to watch things closely. He liked making small objects with his hands. He built little models. He made small machines. He made sundials, tools that use the shadow of the sun to tell the time. He watched the movement of light across walls. He noticed wind, water, wheels, shadows. To other people, these were ordinary things. To Isaac, they were messages. He wanted to know how things worked. He attended school first near his village. Later, he went to the King's School in Grantham, a nearby town. Because the school was too far from home, he lived with a local family. Some accounts say he stayed with an apothecary, a person who prepared medicines before modern pharmacies existed. This may have helped him become even more interested in chemicals, tools, and careful observation. At first, Newton was not the best student. He was not the shining boy everyone praised. He was not always first in class. He was quiet and sometimes distant. But then came a small turning point. A story says another boy treated him badly, perhaps even bullied him. Newton did not simply fight with his fists. He decided to beat the boy in school. That decision changed him. He studied harder. He read more. He began to rise. Pain became fuel. This is important in Newton's story. He did not become great because life was easy. He became focused because life had hurt him. He learned to put his anger into work. He learned to turn a wound into a question. And again that pattern returned. When Newton was a teenager, his stepfather died. His mother returned to Woolsthorpe. She wanted Isaac to leave school and manage the family farm. It was a normal wish. A farm needed someone responsible. Isaac was the son. In that world, a boy did not always choose his future. Family duty often decided it for him. But Isaac was not made for farming. He forgot tasks. He read when he should have worked. He watched water wheels instead of managing animals. He seemed lost in thought. The farm was practical. Isaac's mind was somewhere else. His schoolmaster, Henry Stokes, and his uncle, William Ayscough, understood that Isaac had unusual ability. They helped convince his mother to send him back to school. That choice mattered. One adult's belief can change a young life. Isaac returned to his studies. He prepared for Cambridge, and in 1661, he entered Trinity College at the University of Cambridge. He was not rich. He entered as a student who had to work for support. At that time, such a student was called a Caesar. A Caesar was a poorer student who received help with costs and often did small duties for wealthier students. He had to be humble. He had to work. He had to stand inside a world where others had more money, more comfort, and higher social standing. But Newton had something they could not buy. He had hunger. Not just hunger for food, hunger for knowledge. Now here is where the story becomes interesting. At Cambridge, the official lessons still leaned toward older ideas, especially the teachings of Aristotle, an ancient Greek thinker. But Europe was changing. New books were moving across borders. New ideas were challenging old beliefs. Galileo had studied motion. Descartes had written about mathematics and nature. Kepler had described the paths of planets around the sun. Newton read deeply. He did not only accept what books told him, he argued with them in his mind. He wrote notes. He asked questions. He wanted proof. He wanted order. He wanted the hidden rule behind the visible world. This was the time of the scientific revolution. That means a period when people began using observation, mathematics, and experiments to understand nature in a new way. Newton did not simply join that revolution. He would help give it a language. But first, England fell into fear. In 1665, the Great Plague spread through the country. It was a deadly sickness. People were afraid to gather. Cities suffered. The University of Cambridge closed. Newton went back to Woolsthorpe. He was in his early 20s. For many people, this would have felt like an interruption. For Newton, it became one of the most important quiet periods in the history of science. If you enjoy stories like this, consider subscribing to Timeless Stories. New stories arrive every week to help your English grow. There were no university duties, no crowded rooms, no daily noise. There was only time, and Newton used it. He thought about mathematics. He thought about motion. He thought about light. He thought about the moon. He asked how things changed, how objects moved, how speed increased, how curves could be measured. During this period, he began developing what we now call calculus. Calculus is advanced mathematics used to study change, motion, and growth. It helps us understand things that do not stay still. Imagine that. A young man in the countryside, away from university, begins shaping a tool that future scientists, engineers, and economists will use for centuries. He also studied light. He used a prism, a shaped piece of glass that bends light. When sunlight passed through it, white light split into colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Many people thought the prism created the colors. Newton believed something different. He showed that white light already contained those colors. The prism only separated them. It was a simple experiment, but it changed the study of optics. Optics means the science of light and vision. Then there was the apple. Newton later told people that seeing an apple fall helped him think about gravity. Gravity is the force that pulls objects toward each other. It pulls an apple toward Earth. It also helps keep the moon moving around Earth. The apple story has become almost too famous. Some versions make it sound like the whole idea came in one sudden flash. Real life was slower. Newton had thought about motion and falling objects for years. Other thinkers had also studied related ideas. But the apple became a perfect image because it shows the heart of his genius. He connected the small with the vast. The same force that pulls a fruit down may reach all the way to the moon. The garden and the sky were part of one system. That was the wonder. But the story did not end in the garden. When Cambridge reopened, Newton returned. In 1667, he became a Fellow of Trinity College. A Fellow was a respected member of the college, chosen for learning and promise. In 1669, at only 26 years old, he became Lucasian Professor of Mathematics, one of the most important academic positions at Cambridge. He was young, but his mind was already working at a level few could follow. Newton was not a warm public teacher. He did not love large audiences. His true classroom was his own room. His true conversation was with nature. He continued his experiments with light. He also built a reflecting telescope. Earlier telescopes used lenses, pieces of glass that could bend light and sometimes blur colors. Newton's telescope used mirrors. This made it smaller and clearer than many earlier designs. In 1672, he showed his telescope to the Royal Society in London, a group of leading scientists. People noticed him. His reputation began to grow, but attention brought trouble. Newton was sensitive to criticism. When other scientists questioned his ideas about light, he felt attacked. Robert Hooke, a brilliant and difficult scientist, challenged him. Hooke had done important work in many areas, including microscopy, the study of tiny things through a microscope. He also had ideas about gravity and planetary motion. Newton did not enjoy this kind of public argument. He pulled back. He preferred silence. He preferred control. He wanted his ideas to be complete before the world touched them. This was both his strength and his weakness. His careful mind made his work powerful. But his fear of criticism made him secretive. He could hold ideas for years. He could become angry when others seemed to come near them. Even great minds have shadows. Newton's shadow was not stupidity. It was pride, pain, and a deep need to protect what he had built. And this is the moment everything changed. His name was Edmund Halley. Halley was an astronomer. An astronomer studies stars, planets, and the sky. He was curious, generous, and bold. In 1684, Halley visited Newton and asked a question about planetary motion. He wanted to know what path a planet would follow if the force pulling it toward the sun became weaker with distance in a certain mathematical way. Newton answered almost at once. "An ellipse," he said. An ellipse is an oval shape, like a stretched circle. Halley was amazed. He asked for proof. Newton said he had worked it out before, but could not find the paper. So he began again. This moment pushed Newton back into one of the greatest works of his life. He wrote and expanded his ideas. He explained motion. He explained gravity. He connected falling objects on Earth with planets in the heavens. Halley encouraged him. Halley also helped pay for publication when the Royal Society did not have enough money. In 1687, Newton published Philosophiae Naturalicis Principia Mathematica. People usually call it the Principia. The title means Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. Natural philosophy was the old name for what we now call science. The book was difficult. It was not written for beginners. It was full of mathematics, but its power was enormous. In the Principia, Newton gave the world his 3 laws of motion. The first law says an object stays still or keeps moving in a straight line unless a force changes its motion. The second law explains how force changes motion. The third law says that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. These laws sound simple when we hear them now, but they gave people a new way to understand movement. A cart, a stone, a ship, a cannonball, a planet. All could be studied with the same deep rules. Then came universal gravitation. Universal means it applies everywhere. Newton argued that every object pulls every other object with gravity. The pull is stronger when objects are larger. It is weaker when they are farther apart. This idea joined earth and heaven. Before Newton, many people still imagined the sky as a different kind of place, almost separate from earthly life. Newton showed that the same mathematical order could explain both. An apple falls, the moon circles, the planets move. One universe, one law. The Principia made Newton famous across Europe. Scientists, philosophers, and powerful people saw him as one of the greatest minds alive. But fame did not make him gentle. He remained private. He worked intensely. He often lived inside his thoughts. He could forget meals. He could lose track of time. He could spend years on a problem. So what happened next? In 1696, Newton left Cambridge for London. He became warden of the Royal Mint. The Royal Mint made coins for England. At first, this may sound like a strange job for a scientist. But England had a serious problem. Many coins were clipped or counterfeited. Clipped means people cut small pieces of silver from the edges of coins. Counterfeited means fake coins were made and passed as real money. This damaged trust and hurt the economy. Newton brought his powerful attention to the work. He was not lazy in office. He investigated. He gathered evidence. He studied criminals. He went after counterfeiters with great energy. Later, he became Master of the Mint, an even more important position. His mind that measured the moon could also examine the edge of a coin. In 1703, Newton became President of the Royal Society. He held that position for the rest of his life. In 1704, he published Optics, his major book about light and color. Unlike the Principia, Optics was easier for many readers to approach. In 1705, Queen Anne knighted him. He became Sir Isaac Newton. It was a rare honor for a scientist. His name now belonged not only to universities, but to the nation. But his later years also carried conflict. One of the most famous disputes was with Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, a German thinker and mathematician. Both Newton and Leibniz developed calculus in different forms. Leibniz published his method earlier. Newton had worked on his ideas earlier, but had not published them widely. The argument became bitter. Who had discovered calculus first? Who deserved credit? Newton, as president of the Royal Society, had great power in the debate. He did not behave like a calm judge. He defended his claim strongly. This is a difficult part of his story. Newton had given the world a way to understand motion. But he could not always move gracefully through human conflict. He could measure forces in the sky, but he struggled with the forces inside himself: pride, fear, memory, hurt. Again, we see the lonely child inside the great man. He wanted truth. But he also wanted control. He wanted order. But relationships are not always orderly. Human hearts do not follow clean equations. Newton lived his final years in London. He never married. He had no children. He had friends, visitors, duties, and honor. But there is still a quiet feeling around his life. He had spent so many years, turned inward, that even fame could not make him ordinary. He died in 1727. By the modern calendar, the date was the 31st of March. He was buried in Westminster Abbey, one of the most honored places in Britain. A farmer's son from Woolsthorpe now rested among kings, poets, and national heroes. But the deeper monument was not stone. It was the way people thought after him. After Newton, the universe felt less like a mystery of separate pieces and more like a great system. Engineers used his laws. Astronomers used them. Teachers taught them. Students wrote them in notebooks. Rockets, machines, bridges, and modern physics would all grow from the ground he helped prepare. Of course, science did not stop with Newton. Later, Albert Einstein would show that gravity was even stranger and deeper than Newton knew. Modern physics would go beyond him. But going beyond Newton was possible because Newton had built such a strong road. That is how knowledge grows. One mind sees far because others came before. Newton himself once wrote that if he had seen further, it was by standing on the shoulders of giants. He knew he had inherited ideas from Galileo, Kepler, Descartes, and many others. He did not create knowledge from nothing. No one learns alone. Newton's life was not a straight line from weakness to glory. It was a long road through silence, study, anger, wonder, conflict, and discovery. He was brilliant, but not simple. Great, but not always kind. Focused, but not always free from pride. That is why his story still feels human. If we only call him a genius, we make him distant. But when we see the small boy left behind, in Woolsthorpe, the quiet student watching an apple fall, and the old man still guarding his legacy, his life becomes closer to us. We may not discover gravity. We may not write a book like the Principia, but we know what it means to feel unseen. We know what it means to begin with little. We know what it means to have a question no one else takes seriously. Newton's greatest lesson was not the apple. His lesson was what he did after noticing. He stayed with the question. He returned to it again and again until a small moment opened into a great truth. When you learn English, progress may feel slow at first. One word falls into your mind. One sentence becomes clear. One story stays with you a little longer than before. It may seem small, like an apple dropping in a quiet garden. But if you keep listening, keep asking, and keep returning, small moments become understanding. That is how learning grows, not in one bright flash, but in many quiet returns. Remember the young man sent home by a plague, who used silence as a workshop. The universe did not open to him because he rushed. It opened because he looked, and kept looking, until the ordinary became full of stars. Tell me in the comments, which moment in Newton's life stayed with you the most? Was it the lonely boy left behind in Woolsthorpe, or the young man watching an apple fall in a quiet garden? If these stories help your English grow, subscribe and join us here at Timeless Stories every week. Thank you for listening. I will see you in the next story.